Okay, so make sure you guys all have some band-aids because we're talking about chapter 16, the haircutting chapter. So this chapter can cause a lot of fear in students. This is where a lot of you guys get anxious and nervous. And depending on what cosmetology program you're doing, like I know some programs are 3 years if you're doing it through high school, or part-time. Others are 1 year or 9 months. And you're probably learning a lot quicker in that program. I know it's overwhelming, but just bear with the chapter, reread it, get your practice in. Cengage also has a simulator online. So for this chapter, I recommend going on your Cengage, reading over the theory, watching some videos, playing around with the simulator. And actually, this will probably be the first time you've had a teacher tell you to play video games. But if you have a Nintendo Wii or a Nintendo DS, buy the game for both the Wii and the DS, Busy Scissors. This is what got me into cosmetology many years ago. It was made by Redken, and they actually would have the same simulator that they have now online. So it would teach you like the elevation, where to cut, some of the terminologies, and it would really make you appreciate the industry more. So anyhow, this chapter starts off by giving you some really funny examples. They give you the example of Rapunzel, Samson, Joan of Arc, and the Beatles and how they influenced haircuts. They also give you the concept that a lot of the times haircuts were a way of doing a social movement or a social protest. In the 1920s, men and women, no, sorry, I read the wrong sentence. In the 1920s, women wore the tight, dark bob. That was a way of protest because that was never done before. If you do your research, you'll know that the bob was very influential because women that had the haircut like that, some of them were discriminated against, they weren't hired. There was an example in my state where she got a bob and she was forbidden to work as a teacher. She had to go and get extensions. So that's where we start to see the industry changing. In the 1960s, men were refusing to cut their hair during the protests, such as like the long-haired hippie look, and that revolutionized men's cuts. So haircutting is important to know for many reasons. Know that in this chapter, I know it's going to sound very scary. It's actually not as bad as you think it is. We're going to be learning the basic haircuts, the blunt cut, the graduated bob, or what they call the wedge cut, 45-degree angles, 90-degree haircut, which is most commonly used in the salon, and the long layer haircut, which is typically used for your clients that have a lot longer hair and they just want a little bit of movement. So in order to understand haircuts, you want to understand that the shape of the head is important, also called the head form. Hair responds differently on different areas of the head. So we need to know a little bit of anatomy, painless anatomy. The way we do that is if you take a haircutting class, you're going to be talking about the reference points. Reference points are the marks on the head where the surface of the head changes, such as the ears, jawline, occipital bone, and apex. These are the points that we use to specify design line. So they give you some tips on how to identify your reference points. So when you understand the reference points and the shape of the head, this will help you in the following ways. It'll help you find balance within your design, so both sides of the haircut turn out the same, so that they're even. It's not that one side is longer and one side is shorter. That's called asymmetrical. We don't always want that. It will help you develop the ability to create the same haircut consistently. Once you're able to get down pat how to section the hair, where the reference points are, getting consistent results, that will help you be able to do 5 haircuts at once that all look the same. It will also help show where and when it's necessary to change technique to make up for irregularities, such as a flat crown in the head form. So what that means is that, let's say I want to give someone a really nice graduated bob. That haircut may look nice on someone with the good anatomy, but someone who has a very flat occipital bone, which is the back, you might have to change up your technique with how you get the same result of building that. They don't have that nice round head that can aid in the stacking. So the first reference point is called the parietal ridge. That's going to be on the sides. The parietal ridge is the widest area of the head, starting at the temples and ending at the bottom of the crown. In order to find this area, you want to place a comb flat on the side of the head. The parietal ridge is found when the head starts to curve away from the comb. So mine would be right there. The parietal ridge is also referred to as the crest area. The second reference point is the occipital bone. This bone that protrudes at the base of the skull is the occipital bone, which is right in the back. To find the occipital bone, simply feel the back of the skull or place a comb flat against the nape to find out where the comb leaves the head. So what you'll do is you'll feel and you'll see mine's about right there. Someone may have a very pronounced one. The apex. The apex is the next point, and the apex is the highest point on top of the head. This area is easily located by placing a comb flat on top of the head. The comb will rest on the highest point. So you'll place a comb right there. Mine would be about right there. Now on your mannequins, this is a little challenging because the mannequins are all made the same, but that also makes it easy to check your work. Some of the mannequins aren't made to be anatomically correct, so it does get a little challenging with sectioning and finding these points, but you will get a good idea using a mannequin first and then practicing on one another. The last reference point is the four corners. This may be located in two ways. One way is by placing two combs flat against the side and the back when locating the back corner at the point where the two combs meet. So if you lay them like this, that's one way. The second is by making two diagonal lines crossing the apex of the head, which then point directly to the front and the back corners. You will not need to use every reference point for every haircut, but it's important to know where they are. Cutting past these points can cause a bang to end up on the sides of the haircut once it's dry, creating an undesirable result. So that's when you don't know the reference points. If I take a bang area and I over direct it and I am wrong about this, I can cause bangs that look like a bowl cut, and you don't want that. You want the fringe area to be where it's supposed to be. Now we're going to talk about specific areas of the head, which are the top, front, sides, crown, nape, back, and bang area. These are also commonly discussed when you're talking about haircutting or reading a haircutting book. The top, by locating the parietal ridge, you can then find the hair that grows on the top of the head. This hair lies on the head shape. Hair that grows below the parietal ridge or crest hangs because of gravity. You can locate the top by parting the hair at the parietal ridge and continuing all around the hair on the head. Front, by making a parting or side or drawing line from the apex to the back of the ear, you can separate the hair that naturally falls in front of the ear from the hair behind the ear. Everything that falls in front of the ear is considered the front. So if I am drawing out my four corners, if the hair falls in front of the ear, that's going to be the section. If it's here, I'm going to pull it back, that's behind the ear. The sides are easy to locate. They include all the hair from the back of the ear forward and below the parietal ridge. That's going to be right here. So when I'm sectioning and I get my hair into four quadrants, I have two that are my front of my hair. That's the hair that falls in front of the ear. That's we'll be using hair cutting, hair coloring, texture, all of that. Your nape. Oh no, next is the crown. The crown is the area between the apex and the back of the parietal ridge. On many people, the crown is flat and the site of cowlicks or whorls. Because of this, it's extremely important to pay special attention to this area when hair cutting. This is because when you have a cowlick and you cut that cowlick, what's going to happen is your hair is going to have a little erect piece and you're going to look like alfalfa. Now, not everyone, well, most people don't want to look like that. If you have someone that wants that, you're going to cut a cowlick and cause that look. Most of your clients are not going to want that and they'll freak out if you do that, so you have to be really careful. A lot of things are hiding in that area, so you have to make sure that you're cutting, otherwise you're going to get holes or you get hair that sticks out. Nape. The nape is the area at the back part of the neck and consists of hair below the occipital bone. The nape can be easily located by taking a horizontal parting or by making a horizontal line across the back of the head at the occipital bone. So that will be right around here for me. Other people will be lower or higher, and the hair that falls down will be the nape hair. The back. By making a parting or drawing a line from the apex to the back of the ear, you can locate the back of the head, which consists of all the hair that falls naturally behind the ear. When you have identified the front, you have also identified the back. So that's when in layman's terms, when I section this, hair that's in front here is the front, so I have my two sections here. These two sections are the back. Lastly, the bang area, also known as the fringe area. The bang area is going to be a triangular section beginning at the apex and ends at the front corners. This area can be located by placing a comb on top of the head so that the middle of the comb is balanced in the apex. The spot where the comb leaves the head in the front of the apex is where the bang area begins. Note that the bang area, when combed into natural falling position, falls no further than the outer corner of the eyes. So it'll be around right here. If you over section, what you will get is a bowl-like cut, and that's very scary. If you under section, you're going to get a very small baby bang, and in that case, that would be easier just to drag more out to cut it. It's a scary thing for you to cut your first bangs, but make sure you practice in your mannequin, and you'll get the gist of it. Lines and angles. This is the next part. Every haircut is made up of lines and angles. This is not something we actively think about. You just may know of a not blunt crust, I don't know what I am saying today. You don't know that a blunt cut is basically just a straight, no elevation line. I know that sounds pretty scary, but that's what it is. A lot of people just think you just cut straight across, but we want to use technical terms because we're professionals. A line is a thin continuous mark that is served as a guide. So a blunt cut is a straight horizontal line. An angle, on the other hand, is a space between two lines or surfaces that intersect at a given point. In other words, if I take a line and I pull it from where it grows, it's a 90-degree angle. The two basic lines used in hair cutting are straight and curved. The head itself is made up of curved and straight lines. Cutting lines in the hair make the hair fall into shape. There are three types of straight lines in hair cutting: horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. Horizontal lines are parallel to the horizon, straight across. Horizontal lines direct the eye from one side to another. Horizontal lines build weight. They are also used to create one length and low elevation haircuts and add weight. Vertical lines, which is up and down, are going to be used to remove weight to create graduated or layered haircuts. They are used with higher elevation. Diagonal lines, which is like this. So if you have a graduated bob, that's a diagonal line. They're between horizontal and vertical. They have a slanting or sloping direction. Diagonal lines are used to create fullness in a haircut and to blend long layers into short layers. Beveling, which is also called stacking and graduation, is a technique using diagonal lines to create angles by cutting the ends of the hair with a slight increase or decrease in length. Angles are important elements in creating a strong foundation and consistency in hair cutting because of how the head shapes are created. So an example is the 45-degree angle haircut. I'm going to be pulling a little bit out and it gets higher each time. People do them vertically. I prefer to do mine horizontally, and you just pull to the line, and that gives you a good way to cross-check. Elevation. Elevation is also important because how much stress or lack thereof you're putting on the hair when pulling it or directing it will impact what kind of layers you get, if any. So on a no elevation haircut, I'm not going to take the hair and over direct it and pull everything to it and just cut it. I've seen people do YouTube fails. They pull everything in a ponytail and they'll pull it up and they'll just cut it. You don't know what you're going to get because when you pull that out, it might come out looking like an octopus if you have cowlick swirls or anything else. Also know the terminology in this area. This chapter is terminology heavy. For control during hair cutting, the hair is parted into uniform working areas called sections. Each section may be divided into smaller partings called subsections. A part or parting is a line dividing the hair at the scalp, separating one section of hair from another, creating subsections. Elevation is also called projecting or lifting, and this is the angular degree at which a subsection of hair is held or elevated from the head when cutting. Elevation creates graduation in layers and is usually described in degrees. In a blunt or one-length haircut, there is no elevation, 0 degrees. Elevation occurs when you lift any section of the hair above 0 degrees. If a haircut is not a single length, you can be sure that elevation was used. So what that means is that if I look at a graduated bob, I know that there's some elevation in there. If I look at a short, choppy haircut, there was some elevation in there because they would pull it up at usually 90 degrees. A lot of you that watch the shows like The Real Housewives, take Lisa Rinna for example. She's very famous because she revolutionized that 90-degree haircut. Her haircut is a 90-degree haircut, or what they also call the bubble cut. Typically, when a client brings you a picture, you're going to be able to look at that picture eventually and say, oh, that's 90 degrees at the top, that's 90 degrees here, or they've done 45 degrees in the back near the occipital bone, the sides were over-directed. You will get good at that, and that's why I also challenge you to get your haircutting magazines, learn the techniques, go on behindthechair.com, look up all your resources, join groups on Facebook that are for professional students only. That will help you get an idea of, you can ask questions, other stylists will give you answers. We'll also look at the circle diagram, because a full circle is a 360. We don't do a 360 haircut for obvious reasons. We do a 180 haircut for long layers. That will help you learn. There's also really good shirts that have the lines on it, and it's kind of creative because I like that. There's coffee mugs that have that, so you can drink your coffee or tea while you're studying and really get an idea of that. And don't be stressed with this because I know that I myself am horrible at math. Typically, if you're good at math, you're good at the haircutting chapter. If you're not good at math, you're usually good at color and vice versa. So you want to know your strengths, know your weaknesses. The most commonly used elevations are 45 degrees and 90 degrees. No one's gonna say do a 70-degree haircut. It just doesn't work like that. Also, a lot of the haircuts that are in the salon are usually 45 degrees and 90 degrees. The more you elevate the hair, the more graduation you create. When hair is elevated below 90 degrees, you are building weight. When you elevate the hair at 90 degrees or higher, you are removing weight or layering the hair. The length of the hair also affects the end result. The weight of longer hair often makes it appear heavier and less layers, and you will need to use less elevation on curly hair than on straight textures, or leave the hair a bit longer on curly hair because of shrinkage. Shrinkage will occur with curly hair, and this is when hair contracts or lifts through the action of drying or moisture loss. Now we're going to delve into the cutting line. The cutting line is the angle at which the fingers are held when cutting the line that creates the end shape. It is also known as cutting position, cutting angle, and finger position. So it's known as many different names. And it can be described as horizontal, vertical, or diagonal by using this degrees. So if you're having a cutting line at horizontal, it's down here. If I'm holding my fingers this way, it's diagonal. If I'm holding them out like here, like a wedge, that's gonna be diagonal. And a stationary guideline is a guideline that doesn't move. That's gonna be something that I'm just pulling the hair to, cutting to my guideline. So we're gonna talk about guidelines next, because I mentioned it just now, and you're like, oh, what's a guideline? So I'm gonna keep you in suspense, take your 5-minute break, take a few deep breaths, and we're gonna jump into guidelines, over directions, consultation, face shape, hair analysis, and then we might have time, so we'll jump into hair tools after that.